Wombo combo.
That ain't Falco.
That ain't Falco.
That's what I expected.
Hey everyone, this is Press Any Button. We are back for a very interesting, very exciting part of our action adventure series. Today we're going to be focusing on implementing some combos, finally, into our game. And from this point onward, it's just going to really start coming together, really, in terms of this tutorial. Because once we got the combos down, once we have a system set, there's tons of stuff. There's just like limitless stuff that we can do. And all we got to do is work on a template and then build off of that. Well, I'm in Blender right now and I've got a little explanation for why I'm here. So I had to update Unity. And after that update, I found out that I couldn't access my animation clips in the same way that we could before. So before, what we were doing is, if you remember correctly, is we go over to the dope sheet animation editor and then we just pick and choose from our things there. However, Unity 2019.3.9 is just not having it, and so I'm going to explain how you can kind of fix your animation clip if you've run against the same issues that I have. Alright, so you're gonna see right here I have just one big timeline of all of our animations, and that's really it. You know, you just make a big old timeline of every animation that you have, put it into one thing, and then that's pretty much the solution. So how do I do that? Well, I go over to, say, my first animation. If it was combo 1, then I'd start with combo 1. And so we have combo 1 here, and then you just hit new action. I'm not going to do it right now because that's going to mess me up real bad if I do that, and it's going to mess up all my animations and stuff. In fact, when I leave Blender, I'm not going to save because I don't want anything to happen to my animations, because it's been really delicate recently, and it's not been fun having to figure that stuff out before we even get into the game's design. Once I have my new timeline, and this is all done in the action editor, what I can do is I'll already have that first animation as part of my timeline, and it's important to build it off of a previous animation because it won't allow you to paste in other animation bits if you don't do it like that. So I have my idle animation, and whilst I was on my idle animation, I hit this new action icon, and then I was like, alright, I'm pretty satisfied with what I've got. Now the key is to make sure that your first and last frames are sort of boxing in your entire animation. So to do that, you're going to hover over your first frame, you're going to hit I, and you're going to hit lock rot scale. That's going to lock every transformation that you could possibly do for your character here. And then we're going to go to the end here, lock rot scale, and then it's going to lock the animation again. Because the next thing you'll do is you'll go to an animation like this. You're gonna double tap A, so all of your nodes there are orange, and make sure that you have your whole pose selected just like that, so you're not missing any bones or anything. And then while you're hovering in the timeline here, you're gonna hit Control C, go back to your animation, Control V, and place it just next to that. In fact, let me run that back. Before you even hit Control C, lock out that first frame and that last frame like we explained before. So go to 0 over, hover your mouse in the viewport here, then hit I, lock rot scale. You do that for the last frame, copy and paste into your animation timeline, and it's going to sit right there. And you just keep doing that with all your frames of animation. Now, one thing you might find is a little bit of an issue is your tilted animations, these run animations. Well, the solution is actually pretty simple. So you do the exact same thing, except this time you just go into object mode, and you see that rotation by 20 degrees? That's looking pretty man-made. That doesn't look like a random transformation. That was us in the past. So we're gonna leave that, we're gonna allow that to settle as it is. But you would have found that all of your other animations have been rotated along the x-axis by the same amount that you would have rotated your other animations. How do you fix that? Well, you double tap A to deselect everything, hit B, and then you just go all down your timeline, making sure that you're in the object mode for your model here. And then you hit rotation and set that back to origin. So set rotation on the x-axis or whatever axis. That's going to snap your animations back into place, and you're not going to have any weirdness from that. So I'm just going to, nope, I don't. Okay, we are not saving any changes. We are going because there's been quite a few errors in making this little part that we're doing right now. But first, let's continue on with those animations. So you'll have your little animated person here, your model, and then you go to animation, go to the animation window, and you'll find that you only have like one clip, and that could be your idle, and maybe it's not quite set to where it needs to be. But look at what I've done here. So my idle is the first about 60 frames, not about, actually it is the first 60 frames of my animation. My run is frame 70 to frame 90, and we remember we left those gaps in between our frames. We don't want our animations to affect each other, and you want to make sure you remember or have your model open in Blender so you can get a good reference for where the animation actually starts and ends. Pretty much what you're going to do, you're just going to drag this start point and this end point until you can get a good idea for where those animations start and end. And each time you want to create a new animation, you just hit that add to list and say I want an animation here between frame 133 and frame 101. Well, I just make that, and then you preview it and you see your animation there. So I'm just going to revert everything so we don't have any problems. And yeah, that concludes that little side note. We'll just blast through the rest of this tutorial. Alright, so you saw we got a combo system, and it's using the game objects that we created before. So you'd probably reset all your stuff in terms of your player. Make sure they have a rigid body, capsule collider, freeze their rotation along the X, Y, and Z. Get that animator character controller from your previous one. If you can't find it, it's going to be in there under the assets. So you would have created it before. Just use the same animator. And then you have your player move script. Right. So we're doing everything in the player move script because it's linked to how we did our melee before. It kind of makes us move forward a little bit. So I thought, why not just get it all done in one script? It also allows us to control whether we're going to melee in the sky or melee on the ground. And you know why we want to control that. Before we go over to Visual Studio, I've already done it, but you'll want to go over to your character here, their model, in the assets folder, or wherever you've placed them under your assets. And you're going to want to take all of these animations and drag them into the animator. So see, it's put 0 after my animations because I've already got my animations here. But that's really all you need to do, and they're just going to be tied to your character after that. Great, now let's head over to Visual Studio to get a good idea of how we got these sick combos going. I'm in Visual Studio right now, and there's a couple of things that we're not going to need anymore. So this public float, punch rate, and next punch, we're not going to need them anymore. I won't touch them because if I do, I know my computer's going to explode. The whole project's just going to become corrupted. All these bad things are going to happen because they usually happen when I make any little change. So we'll just leave those as they are, but to be honest, they're not going to affect anything. So what is going to affect how we move on with this project? Well, we got a couple of doohickeys up here. So we got a public int and we called that counter. So this is the number of clicks that we're going to do. I didn't want to call it number of clicks, but I'm linking the dudes that I referenced the scripts from. So you're going to see anyway, but I like to, you know, back away from people's methods a little bit, try to figure out my own thing as much as possible, even if it is as petty as not using number of clicks instead of counter. Alright, then I got a float right here, this is last click time, and then I got a float here, max delay. Right, what are all these things gonna do? Let's go down into void update, and this is a good time for me to tell you to get rid of that punched ball. We're not gonna need it anymore. So if your punched ball is up here, just get rid of that real quick, and anything that references it, just get rid of it, or use this method, which is really good. So what I've done here is I've just turned all of my prior script into comments. So the stuff I want to use is still there, and the stuff that I don't need to use is not being used. It's all just a comment. So you put 2 dashes before a line and it becomes a comment, highlights green, and now it's ineffective. It's like it's not even there. It's just like a little side note. Even though these functions are here, they're not going to do anything. So that's pretty good. Okay, so we're undergrounded right now. So you go to is grounded true and make sure you either delete or make all your prior punching stuff a comment. So that's going to start from get key down and then finish up on anim.setBall punch false. So we've got this first line, and we're pretty much saying if max delay is less than the last time that we click, then our counter is going to be set to 0. Now I've set my max delay to 5, and you're going to want to set up your max delay. Don't set it as 0 and then like be confused, because I've done that. Just don't do that. Don't go through that struggle. Just set your max delay to 5 or 1.5 is actually a much better way to do that. You want to put the F just after that if your number is not an integer. My number is not a whole number, so it's going to be 1.5. Go back into update. Alright, so we have that max delay. The last time that we click is greater than 1.5. 1.5 seconds have passed and we haven't clicked again. Our counter turns to 0. And if our counter is 0, this is the magic right here. This is where we get to cancel out our combo. If our counter is 0, then we set all of our animations to false. So once they become 0, that animation goes back to the idle state. We're going to figure out those transitions in a bit. We got input.getKeyDown mouse 0, so just the same as we used here. So you might as well just boop and then throw it down here. You open brackets and then last time click equals time, and then we set up a counter. So each time we click, we're going to add a value of 1 to our counter. And so if our counter is equal to 1, we're going to have anim.setBall punched equals true. So that punched parameter is going to become true. We're going to transition to an animation, which is going to be our first jab animation. And then go up again. You take that line for instantiate and you take that line for player body, add force, and you just paste it under there. Or over here. And once you've done that, you've effectively done it all, because now it's just a case of, instead of using if, you use else if for every other function. You change the counter number to something different, go up 1 each time, and you go up 1 in terms of your animation parameters each time, and you paste in instantiate player body.add force. So what is happening here? Counter equals 1. We play the first animation because that's the parameter that's going to lead us into that first animation. We instantiate that hit missile, which we created. It's like a hitbox, and that lets us do damage to our enemy and push them away a little bit. And then our player has a force added to them, which is transform.forward times our hit momentum, which we've referenced at the top. It's also a public float, so we can change it in the inspector. Great. Then after you finish all your else ifs, you will then, just before we leave the entire if statement, so our if statement being input.getKeyDown, you're going to then want to make a limit to your counter. So we have counter equals mathf clamp. So we're referencing the integer value, the minimum and the maximum, the minimum being 0 and the maximum being 7. That's all we got to do for that bit. Now, how can we change this so that it has a little bit of customizability? Well, I have the opportunity to change my hit missiles in each of these functions. Now, how that's going to help me is, maybe I want to have a strong shot. Maybe I want to have a hit that's going to do a lot of damage, or a hit that's going to move our enemy a lot. Now we have that enemy hurt script over here, and in our enemy hurt script we reference the tag hit. Now say if we made a game object with a tag big hit and we said, you know what, instead of having our recoil, so adding that relative force being, you know, -1, how about we have it like -10 and then times that recoil. That recoil is going to be that float that we set in the inspector. That's going to knock our enemy back quite a bit. So if we want to have things like heavy hits at the end of combos, then that's a really good way to have that. What I've done is I've taken my force that I apply to my player body. I've just manipulated it a little bit. So I took the average thing that we're doing here, so transformed it forward times hit momentum, and I just doubled it. I said, you know what, ×2, because our last animation is that kind of like headbutt front flip thing. He's not going to stay static in that, he's going to move forward a little bit. If I did it by like ×3, then you're going to see it's going to be a little bit more extreme and it's going to be a little bit more obvious, so I guess I'll keep that for demonstration's sake. Okay, so now in terms of our script, we are done. That is all we need to do. So all of our stuff just happens in Update. There are other solutions that work outside of Update, however, because we cannot set events on our animations because they are read only, because we're actually editing our animations externally, we've had to use this method. It'll make sense why I mentioned that if you go to the reference material, where a guy has set up a really awesome script for doing combos and stuff. His channel is just like blows mine away, to be honest. I'll probably end my channel by linking it. But anyway, time's ticking on. Let's get back to it. Right, so we would have had our animations here, so you would have placed your jab, straight, hook, whatever your animations are, whatever you want to call them, into here. And I've linked them all to the idle animation. So you know how we do it. Make that transition, get that arrow, click it onto there, make that transition back, select the thing, make the transition back, click the arrow, do all that good stuff. And then you'll want to create your ball parameters over here. So you go ball, 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 punch 1, punch 2, punch 3, punch 4. Exact same way that you would have had it in your script. Once you've got all your parameters to match these parameters that we've referenced, you'll be able to make those transitions. So we're going to say, alright, so when punched is true, we're going to transition outwards. But when punched is false, we're going to transition inwards. And then there's a different dynamic to the next hit. So that's the first one. And then the second one, you go straight into the next animation in your combo chain. So when punch 2 is true, then we go straight into straight. And then when it's false, we go back into the idle. And just keep going up by those values that you've set. So I'm just going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and here's my 7th. So all of the ones that link through the animations are going to be set to true, and then all of the ones that go back to our idle animation are going to be set to false. We're going to disable the exit time on all of those. And make sure with your animations, just select your animations here. If loop time is checked, make sure that that's unchecked by just going to edit. You go down here and you can uncheck loop time. And you can just go through your animations pretty quick because it's going to take you through that animator there. Just do that for your combat animations. Don't do that for your like running animations and things because they will just stop. But if you do that for your combat animations, then your character's not going to be fidgeting quite as much. And now you should be ready to test your script out. Let's just make sure that everything's here. Our new stuff is going to include that counter. And that's pretty much it. We've got our hit detection set under hit missile, and we've got our spawn origin set. Now with your hit missile, What you want to do at this point is, we don't need to see it. The person playing the game doesn't need to see it. So where it has mesh renderer, just go to the prefab and deselect that mesh renderer. We'll keep the collider active, keep it as is trigger. Still got a rigid body, but it's not using gravity. So everything's pretty good. Now I'm going to show you something that you wouldn't have maybe noticed before. But this is a little treat for sticking around. So I have my first animation there, and I go back to 0. 1, 2. What happens? We go back to 0. 1, 2, 3. And we go back to 0. And that is really the magic of this. We go back to 0 each time. And you can see that after about 1.5 seconds, we go back to where we were. Now I'm just going to back up my character. I really need to make a back running animation. But we got that, and that. And you see, I spoke about just extending that final animation a little bit, because he is sort of like leaping forward, so you can see the difference there. Our hit momentum, he properly goes for it in that final one. Now I can tone that down, I can edit it. You can do whatever you want, because this is your own game. Just gonna use this thing as a punching bag, demonstrate what we got going here. So there we are, our combo's working pretty good. And there we are, he's dead. Sorted him out. Controls, little bit clunky still. Camera work, little bit clunky still. I've turned off damping, that's why my camera isn't tracking me right now. If I just turn on damping in the inspector, like so, then our camera will start tracking us again. But hey, what can I say? We did it, guys. This is the most important part of our action adventure game. The fact that we actually have some action. I'm just really pleased with this development. I hope this has helped you guys out. Do the usual stuff. Send that motivation, that love to this channel, because we are doing some really good things in terms of our work with Unity. Guys, as always, this has been another Press Any Button tutorial. And I'm not saying it empty. I'm not saying it because it's catchy, because it's kind of cheesy. But seriously, guys, press on and keep creating. I believe that there's a lot of game talent lurking behind that computer screen. Alright guys, see you in the next part.